This is
There we
executive.
go.
Okay, this is the executive committee meeting. We're restarting it now that we have a quorum here for Monday, February 14, 2022. I need a motion to excuse Mr. Knipp and Mr. Wilkinson.
I still need to do the roll call.
You do?
I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Okay, all right. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Fisher,
Here.
Mr. Knipp, Mr. Simile,
Here.
Mr. Snyder,
Here.
Mr. Van Horn,
Here?
and Mr. Wilkinson. Not present. Mr. Knipp and Mr. Wilkinson are not present.
Okay, can I get a motion to excuse Mr. Knipp and Mr. Wilkinson?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Okay, I trust we've all been able to review the agenda for tonight. I want to see if there's any changes. I've got a couple to suggest, but anybody else have any thoughts on the agenda tonight? A couple things. I'd like to I think Mr. Hirth was okay with it. We'll take out the playground structure update and the fire transitions update, since that will just be reviewed at council. So we'll strike those from the agenda tonight. And I want to add one small probably a 5-minute discussion about Mr. Mitzvin tonight gave me something I wanted to bring up for us to decide something on. And I think that's it for now.
Motion to accept agenda as stated.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. No one registered to speak tonight, I guess?
No.
Okay. Minutes, I trust everybody's got a chance to review the minutes. Any changes or additions to it?
Motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes.
Mr. Van Horn, can we do a quick commercial for minutes
Yes.
before we move on? So we endeavor, council's rules are to have the minutes in your hands 48 hours prior to the meeting. So generally, the packets get posted by mid-afternoon on the Friday before a council meeting. It's important that if you see any changes or anything that you would like to see fixed before we get to this council meeting, please make sure you let Mr. Lanzer know that in advance, because there's a lot of copying that has to take place to make those changes. So we're trying to make sure that the minutes on the website are accurate, that the hard copies that we are legally obligated to keep are correct, as well as the things that you see in your packet. So your cooperation there is very appreciated. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hurt. I want to start with a really short thing. I met with Mr. Mitzman quite a while ago, and he told me he had a whole bunch of old Villager newsletters. They're a huge box of them, and I agreed to get them from him. And I would like to see if it's okay if we have Andy or the administration look into what it will cost to have those digitalized, or some kind of archive for us, if there's a cost to that, before we do anything with those. I think there's a lot of history in those things. I think I hate to have them just disappear. And we can put that on for a future discussion. We don't have to do that tonight.
Yeah, and what I would recommend is, as we are developing our communication strategy in the Community Engagement Committee, why don't we have that as part of their discussion?
Okay.
Because there is a case to be made for putting that information on the website, and I think that's part of that overall discussion.
Okay.
So if he wants us to take possession of those to protect them, we can do that whenever it's convenient for him.
Okay, I have them now. He gave them to me.
Okay,
And I promised him that I would make sure they're
you're it.
well taken care of. Well, I don't know if I want to keep them in my house too long, but we'll work it out.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Okay, now we're going to discuss the priorities for 2022. Do you want to open this, Ron, or?
So there are some we've made a lot of progress with the strategic plan, the housing analysis, the development analysis. Mr. Lanzer and I are working on strategies to do the business census, and then hopefully the first meeting of the engagement committee will take place on Tuesday, February 22nd at 9:30 in the morning. That being the case, the landlord-tenant issue is an important issue for this committee to move forward this year. Help me here, Roger. What did we talk about earlier today?
Yeah, basically, when I reflected on the executive committee and the seeming direction of our council and our village and trying to get into strategic planning things, I'm trying to reset some things so that we're working on those things that support those efforts, strategic planning, future development, all those things. So what we talked about was, and it was great timing with the new electees training, because what I'd like to do is take some of the stuff that we're trying to get done, such as the pods and dumpsters discussion, property maintenance code maybe, or any of the things that we really want to get done, and assign them to two-person subcommittees, which we're allowed to do. They can be two council people or a resident, whatever, and have them work the issue. And then essentially when they're ready to say, we're ready for executive committee to review it, finalize it, whatever, then it will come up on the agenda and hopefully we can pass those quickly. Because if I step back, we basically as an executive committee have, I think from now on, 9 hours of meetings for the rest of the year. And I was thinking, how are we gonna get all these, even the ones we have listed on here done, or passed or completed with only 9 hours of meeting time? And I think some of them could take half the year, at least part, trying to discuss it and make some of the adjustments to it. So, and I've talked to Ron, I talked to the mayor, and I was, again, affirmed by the new electricity training that we would be allowed to do that because we have enough council members to do that. So I'm willing to, as an example, I started working on myself just because I like to read and figure it out on the pods discussion and dumpsters. I did a fair amount of work just to kind of understand it, look at some other ones. And I'm willing to kind of lead that one if someone would like to volunteer to do it with me. And then we would have a goal of trying to have a draft done by, you say next meeting in March?
Yeah, so what we want to do, we've tried this several years before, but we'd like the first council meeting of the month to be a discussion meeting for the full council. So when there's legislation that's being introduced or there's a new concept or there's something that needs to be reviewed, it happens then. The second meeting of the month then would be when legislation is actually being passed. So that, for instance, this particular issue, if we did have a subcommittee work on the issue of the pods and dumpsters and those other things, and there were something that this committee could discuss on March 7th that had some substance, it is possible that could go to council that night for some discussion and then be in the queue for possible legislative action on March 28th. Now that doesn't say this is the time frame on this. It could get bumped to April, but that's just an example of trying to create a flow for legislation going through the process. The other thing that the mayor has asked Mr. Donnellan to do, it won't be tonight, but it'll be in a future council meeting, is to talk about how to get things in front of council if there are things that you see the council needs to discuss or there are issues that should be addressed. The mayor, the administrator, and any council member can bring an issue to the committees. Generally, discussions on things happen in the committees because that's where the detail and the discussion and the research takes place. Council meetings themselves should be quick places for review of information and passing of legislation. That's the Reader's Digest version of that process. But generally, if you think of it in those terms, take things to the committees first, which is why Ms. Moskovitz was encouraged to speak to the executive committee before she went to the full council. This is the committee, this is the place where things like that can be triaged and either go to the administration or end up becoming legislation of some sort.
Yeah, I think, what I'm hoping is that we're not gonna assign these to people. We really want people that are interested in volunteering for me to work on an issue they're interested in. So it's not heavy-handed. I'm already into the pods thing, so you don't have to volunteer tonight or whatever if someone wants to join with it. And we can have a resident involved too, right? With the council member to do this, or is it just the,
It can be anybody who's on your committee.
okay,
And if there's somebody who is interested in joining to be a part of the subcommittee, that's allowed also. It's just a matter of making sure that we're communicating with the mayor what's going on with the committee.
And then, any discussion on that? Any thoughts on
Nominate Mr. Knipp.
that?
I second that.
So when Mr. Van Horn and I talked earlier this afternoon, it would be good if we can come out of this meeting this evening with a companion for him to work on the pods issue over the next couple of weeks. So if anybody has a burning desire to work on the pods issue, step right up, make yourselves known. But that would be a good result.
Question, that wasn't a volunteer. But,
Darn.
starting off, which topics do you see us trying to tackle first?
Great question. This is just my opinion because it's really up to our committee. But for us to, at least what I see in front of us, the landlord tenant thing for us as a committee, I think that's what we should be discussing it here for now. Because that's the most important, I think, that feeds into our economic development, all those things for now. The pods, not so much, although I'm not saying it's not important. But if we're going to spend our 9 hours this year, I'd rather be spending on that. So can I lead that into something else that kind of falls into? When I asked last time for people to contact me with the things that they would like to see us be working on, some of these will be familiar. Obviously, splash pad, people want us to talk about that. Dog park, sidewalks on Englewood, beautification like trash cans and things like that. Some police issues, just pretty minor stuff. But and these are the things that are great. But so these would be great to be handled through subcommittees at first and not spent necessarily here until they're ready to kind of get their final thing. So Ms. Snyder working on the community, the engagement stuff. There's things that kind of came up that say these would be great to fit into the discussion with that to be vetted for that. If we get a park board going, obviously some of these would fit well into that board or committee working through those things before we actually have to, we're still here to kind of take the final stage, I think, and do the final review, and then of course send it to council. But I think a lot of work could be done outside and should be done. Hopefully it's done with residents and other people too, the more we can spread this out. Is that fair? So,
Thank you.
So and here's another thing which might be helpful in this process. These meetings that we have to be held in person. So the executive committee, the finance committee, community engagement, other work that you're doing, as long as it's not a public meeting, can be done via Zoom. So we can hook you up with the Zoom accounts, and if it's more convenient for you to have discussions during the day or in the evenings or whatever away from this building, you can certainly do that.
Oh, okay.